celebration via Zoom.
Sorry, that was just the recording.
Thank you for booking in and being with us tonight. Please note that your camera and microphone will remain mute for the 45 minutes of the session. And do send your questions, as you're already doing, via chat. The session will be recorded and so that we can share it with people who may not have been able to attend this evening. I would like to start by acknowledging our Wurundjeri elders on whose land we are gathered, at least in Eltham and around here, to celebrate this very beautiful book. It's their spirit and their resilience that has kind of informed all the work we do even till today. Charlotte Wood is a much loved and much read author. I know that her 6 novels and 2 nonfiction books are perfect recommendations for book clubs, especially those who like a lively discussion to go with their sparkling Shiraz. Tonight, we would have had that and Charlotte at Edendale Farm to celebrate her 3rd nonfiction book. She would have flown from Sydney. And the book, as you know, is The Luminous Solution. In this period of loneliness, reflection, long weeks of long walks, bird song, that could not be a more timely book. Congratulations, Charlotte, for a book that we all need to read and will read from cover to cover. To unfold the main themes in your work tonight, we have with us a fellow writer, just as fiercely intelligent as you are, Kate Mildenhall, author of Skylarking and the Unputdownable Mother Fault. I'm not very good at juggling lots of things, but Eltham Bookshop is really privileged to be located in her neighborhood and indeed to be the bookseller to 4 generations of her family. 3 generations are watching you tonight. Welcome, Kate and Charlotte. And Kate, you can take it away.
Thank you so much, Mira. It's always lovely to be introduced by you, and you always say such lovely things. And hello, Charlotte. It's so good to see you.
Hey.
I think people would find it amusing to know that we talk regularly on email and podcast and Zoom, and yet we are still yet to have that dinner in person. We have been thwarted. It's ridiculous.
Weird. I've sort of forgotten that we've actually never met.
I
feel
know.
that we
I
know
feel that
each
we
other
have.
so well.
To our guests,
Yeah, well, one day we will.
one day we will. I want to give our guests some context, particularly as Mira said, at this bookshop, which has been such an influence on my creative life, and that Charlotte too has been quite an incredible influence on my creative life. And so if you feel like you're sitting in on a conversation that is kind of halfway through, you are, because we've been talking for some time about creativity. I've been going over some journals of when I was writing The Mother Fault, because I've stupidly started a PhD, and which Charlotte also has, and which influences this amazing book. And I found the note to myself where I had written, I really want to write a book like Charlotte Wood does. And it was at least a year before I finally got in contact with her. And I think it's something about the way that, Charlotte, you talk about creativity. You write so incredibly, but you can also encompass this thinking about creativity, which is so wonderful for all of us. So, audience, I will let you have some questions towards 8:30, maybe, but please make them good, and you can pop them into the chat about then. Charlotte, you say in the book that you were asked to write a book like this on creativity and writing process much earlier in your career, but you resisted. Why did you resist? And why then in 2020 was it finally time to put this book together?
Well, thank you, Kate, and thank you, Mira, and thank you all for coming. I want to say just quickly, first of all, that I am coming to you tonight from the traditional lands of the Darkinjung people, which is actually not in Sydney where I normally live, but on the Central Coast. I've got a special permit to be able to get away for purposes of workable internet, which I won't go into. And I pay my respects, of course, to elders past and present, and to any First Nations people here with us tonight. Yeah, so I guess I'd been asked if I wanted to put a collection of writing together, or stuff that, I've written lots of short pieces over, I keep saying 20 years, but I think it's actually 30 years of writing. And I didn't want to just sort of have a collection of sort of related stuff. And I did start thinking about maybe I could do something about being an artist or the creative process, but I sort of didn't really get galvanized for that until last year when COVID hit. And I wrote a piece, I was commissioned to write a piece for the Fairfax newspaper with the topic that was given to me of the inner life. And sometimes that being sort of commissioned to write on a particular topic is kind of a pain in the neck. And sometimes it's a gift. And this time it was a gift because it forced me to think about, what is an inner life? What does it mean? What does it do for us? Does it matter if we don't have an inner life? Just playing around with those ideas of what it might even be. Anyway, so and the timing of the piece worked out that it was about the third week of the first lockdown in Sydney, when everyone was just in utter panic, where we didn't know what was going to happen. The world was just starting to go into, or had been for a few months in this panic, and now it had hit us. And I just lost it, frankly. I lost my shit. I went into a state of real panic about everything, including whether my husband's business would just completely collapse, whether our, people we loved would get sick and die, whether we would get sick, all of that, whether the book industry would die, So, and I was in this sort of rushing panic, filling up this panicky centre with every possible thing that I could get hold of from the outside. Even things that were kind of, what I kind of think of now as just sort of posh consumption, like, yoga and I didn't actually make sourdough bread, but that's only because I would have eaten like 3 loaves a day.
The best of us did. It's okay.
I would love to know how to make sourdough bread, but every other thing I just ran around like crazy, kind of stuffing into myself. And then I just couldn't keep it up, and I just thought, what the hell is going on? Just stop this and go back to my, when I'm working well, my normal place of groundedness is a very quiet inner world, and that is the creative space that I live and work in. So anyway, I published that piece, and after I did, I had a lot of people contact me saying that, and they weren't artists or writers, but they said that just really articulated what I was feeling at that time, and it really helped me just sort of settle and think about what I actually want, So I thought, maybe this is the time, maybe a discussion of these kinds of things, because the inner life that I talked about in that piece is, intimately connected with my creative life. So I thought maybe, given that piece spoke to people outside the, arty world, maybe a larger collection of sort of aligned pieces, I guess, might also speak. A discussion of creativity and the impulse to make things might speak to a wider audience. So I decided to do it.
I think it does. I think we spoke to you for the First Time podcast, I think the day before the book came out, and you were in a fluster because you were saying, I haven't talked about it yet. You've done a couple of interviews, but I know that you've done so many interviews over the last 2 weeks, and that you must be getting a sense of those other people. So not necessarily the writers and the artists, but the readers, and the people who may not even consider themselves to be a creative type, who are finding some solace and words of wisdom in this book as well. Are you already getting some reader feedback?
I'm getting a lot of people saying, I can't wait to get my hands on that book.
Because the postal system is broken down, and so everyone's waiting
and they're not allowed to go to the bookshop. But a lot of those people are not people who you would think of as artists, but I know there are people who feel like they have something they have this impulse in them. And they, last night I did an event, and one of the questions was from a woman who said, look, I've always loved drawing and painting, but my parents told me it was a waste of time and I should just, stop fussing around with it. And I love to do it, but I find myself, and every now and again I go to do it, but I find myself freezing up and thinking, oh, this is no good. So, what have you got to say to me? And I was like, well, that impulse, you have to go with that impulse. It's a terrible thing to tell someone that's a waste of time. But I think what this woman was experiencing was the feeling that we all have when we go to start something that we don't know how to do, or we might be just learning how to do it, and we think, oh, it's no good, therefore I should stop doing it because I am not a creative person, or it's not for me. Or, people say to me all the time, oh, I wish I was creative. And I'm like, you know what, I bet you are on some level. And when I'm talking about being creative, I'm not talking about being professionally creative. I'm talking about the impulse to make a cake, to make a beautiful room. Some people, you walk into their houses and their house is beautiful. Yeah. And it's not to do with money. It's to do with their eye, or their, their eye for composition, their understanding of how to position things in a room. But it comes from a creative space in themselves and a desire to make something beautiful. Now, making something beautiful could be making a farm beautiful. It could be making a table. It could be making a cake, a garden, or a business. What I would love is for people to think much more broadly about what creativity is.
I saw a quote where you'd been interviewed by Booktopia, and you said in it, you used this phrase radical cross-pollination, which I think is what you're talking about now. And you go on to say that you hope that the book is a call to just be a bit braver and wilder in our own lives and our work, and to open up to a sense of unknowing, of discomfort and mystery and curiosity and failure and the fruits of failure, because there are so many rewards available to us as individuals and communities when we do. And I think in that space, you were talking about our approach to climate change, or how we're also dealing with the kind of crises, multiple levels of crises we've got on at the moment in response to the pandemic. So can you tell us a little bit about this idea of radical cross-pollination? It's such a good phrase.
I mean, I just pulled that out of the air, so,
Yeah, but you do it so beautifully and with such confidence, Charlotte.
Now I have to defend it. Look, I think this cross-pollinating idea is, I really, it might sound kind of romantic, but I think I feel like it's the only thing that's going to save us. We have to talk to each other and outside the areas that we always operate in. So, in our culture in Australia, we think art is for arty people, and we put it over there and we think it's a decorative, just a pretty thing on the wall. We don't think it has anything to do with climate change or industry or public health. And I think that is such a missed opportunity. And I also think artists need to be a lot more open-minded about where they draw from in their work. So a couple of years ago, I had a residency at an amazing place at Sydney University called the Charles Perkins Centre, named after Charlie Perkins, the great Aboriginal leader, who was a kind of anti-establishment, wildly innovative, fantastic guy who did not accept the status quo. And that's why they named this place after him. That place is a science research facility working on sort of on chronic health issues. And the guy who runs it, Steve Simpson, is a biologist, an evolutionary biologist. And his idea is to get people from all these different fields and bring them together and see what happens. Because the way that we have addressed chronic health and disease has largely failed. So instead of just keeping on doing the same thing that fails, let's just blow everything up and bring in all these different people. So he, from the very beginning, wanted a creative writer in residence. So I was the first. There have been 5, I think there's now number 6 in there, where a incredible philanthropist called Judy Harris gives the centre $100,000 to pay a writer for a year just to be there next to the scientists and see what happens. So these kind of swarms of ideas just move around each other, and really interesting things happen out of that, practically, but also emotionally. And I was talking to Steve about this the other day, and he said, don't underestimate the morale and the excitement that comes from bringing excellence together from all different fields. And you walk in that building and you feel it, this sort of energy of these brilliant minds from all over the place in this one space. And, you know, I keep thinking about the pandemic. You know, I had this sort of fantasy of reeling back to the beginning of last year and thinking, what would have happened if we got, right at the beginning, we got the best people from public health, epidemiology, music, sport, industry, every field, manufacturing, transport, you know, every single field you could think of, get, you know, 50 of the top minds together and go, how are we going to tackle this? And I just feel like we would have come up with amazing strategies and fantastic, surprising ideas. But no, we go, well, that's a health thing, so that goes there. So everybody else is irrelevant. It's just, you know, and we've seen what's happened. It's, you know, it's not gone well, even though, you know, comparatively we've done okay. But anyway, I do think, but I think artists are sometimes just as narrow, you know, to be frank, that we don't look outside, sometimes even our own genre, you know, of writing. I remember years ago being at Varuna, the Writers' House, you know, where I know you've been there, and you meet some great people there, and you also meet some people who you think, oh, I could do without seeing you again. But I remember being there with a woman who was working on a memoir of sexual abuse, which is a, you know, really tragic, awful thing. And she, for the previous 5 years, the only book she had read were other people's memoirs of sexual abuse. And I was like, oh my gosh, that is not going to help you. Yeah, I mean, I didn't actually say that myself. But I just thought, you need an imaginative approach to this really, you know, difficult material. I would have said, go and look at paintings, listen to music, go and talk to a long-haul truck driver, something to kind of aerate the material and get, you know, just a different tack, a different way of thinking about this same thing.
Because this is what you do, Charlotte. So much of the book, and it's wonderful, is infused with you looking outward to especially visual art and different types of art. And there's a line which I have, people can see that, you know, I've read the book a couple of times and underlined things. There's a line where you, the essay on the Lady in the Unicorn series is deeply satisfying. But the other part is where you talk about the painter Jasper Johns and what he says about taking an object and doing something to it and then doing something else to it. And I think that especially the artists among us will see that that's something else. It's exciting. It's the stretch. It's the otherness. Tell us a little bit about that idea.
Yeah, I came across that quote somewhere years ago. I don't even know where I first saw it. But so Jasper Johns, the American painter, wrote in a diary, I think, take an object, do something to it, do something else to it. And I just, when I heard that, I was like, yeah, that's it. That's what art is. And it's the something else that makes it art. You know,
How did this apply to Natural Way of Things? Because I know people here will be familiar with that.
Yeah, so The Natural Way of Things was the first spark for that book. So it's a book about a bunch of late teenage, early 20s young women who have been somehow sexually molested or assaulted or, you know, taken advantage of by a powerful man or men, and they have told somebody about it, and that means they have been sort of abducted and taken to this prison in the middle of nowhere in Australia. And the initial impetus for that idea came from a documentary about the real Hay Institution for Girls in New South Wales, a brutal, horrific place in the town of Hay, which was a place for sort of wayward teenage girls. And I heard this documentary. So I guess that's to take an object, is take hay. And then it was sort of, I started writing about a fictional place, sort of set around the same time, in a naturalistic kind of way. So that was still just taking an object, I guess. Then it wasn't working at all. And there's quite a bit of detail about this in the Luminous Solution. But so I realized I had to, well, out of just desperation, basically. I didn't know I had to do this. I was just trying any damn thing to try and get it moving. I kind of flipped the time frame from the past to what could be a future, or maybe now, but it's sort of slightly ahead of now future. And I changed the sort of tone of it from realism to a kind of surrealism, or a slightly speculative kind of weird feeling. So I would say that's, I've taken the object, hay, I've done something to it, which is doing that flip. And then doing something else to it was bringing in all this really quite weird stuff, where sort of a lot of symbols and dreamy kind of feeling, but things like the rabbits, which became kind of a huge part of the book. And Yolanda, sort of one of the main characters, sort of basically becoming an animal. So once all that sort of dreamy, weird, almost magical realism, not that I had any concept of what it was while I was doing it, but that was the something else for me that kept me interested in working on the book, and took it away from the original something.
How did you know to let it in? How did you know, like, was there an energy to those objects?
Yeah, I mean, I let it in because there was nothing else to be done. Like, it was sort of there, it was nudging at me, it was pushing at me, and it was very dark material. This real place was a shocking place, and actually much more brutal than anything in my book. So I didn't want to write about this brutal, miserable, misogynistic stuff. And yet I was writing about it. So how was I going to do that? And so I kept resisting it. I resisted it and resisted. It was like this big block in the middle, and I kept trying to go around it or over it, and it was still there. And basically the only way I could make it work was just to go, all right, I'll just let this thing run over me. Oh, this is terrible. My metaphors are really outwinded now, but I had to stop resisting it and let whatever was coming out of my very, kind of primal, lizardy brain, part of my brain, come out. And then it had energy. And it was like, then I could see there's something else, like I wasn't really conscious that this was what I was doing. But I mean, you know what it's like when you write something, you're like, oh, it's not working. And then it might be 2 words and you think, ooh, something's there that I didn't expect. Some sort of surprise, something sometimes a bit scary, or a bit, you think, oh, that sounds like somebody else's writing. Or, oh, actually, I can't do that because that'll really change the whole book. So I'll put that aside. And then you keep working, but this thing still keeps, and I know that you're dealing with this right now. You've had a big sort of shift in your work. So the thing that you sort of discount things that come at you because they're going to get in the way or be annoying or stop you getting a nice orderly project happening. But to me now, I go, okay, I need those things. Let them come, because they have energy and they have power that comes from a place in you that you can't sort of rationalize.
Well, that's that intuition. And I should tell people, I could talk to Charlotte for about 10 years about this book and we won't even get close. So a lot of this is unpacked in detail in the book, and we're just not going to go there. But I did want to talk to you a little bit about that idea, because you say it very plainly, your impulse to creativity and your pragmatism. And that you need to, and there's some beautiful different metaphors that you use in there about that, but how to combine them, how to be able to allow those weird feelings, disruptive feelings in, and yet still work ahead to finish the book, the table, the garden. What does your kind of how does your habits and process now encompass those two feelings or those two different states?
Yeah, well, I mean, of course, the stuff that I love is the dreamy, weird, arty, sort of ethereal, mysterious stuff. That's kind of exciting and thrilling. But that doesn't get a book written, unfortunately. The stuff that actually gets a book written is going to the desk, sitting down, keeping some sort of regular rhythm. That's when I work best, is when I have some regular rhythm, a sort of routine. Boring things like going to bed early, getting up early, doing exercise, having proper food, not drinking too much, blah, blah, all that stuff that isn't very arty at all. But that's the stuff that allows you to get to the desk. And, I still have to all the time go, oh yeah, I've got to do this. I would rather I could go about my life and it would come to me and then I'll go and write it all down. But it doesn't happen like that. You've got to, and I think it's, there's lots of people. I think Stephen King has talked about this, or Norman Mailer, all those sort of blokey man writers. But women writers too. You just have to have, inspiration doesn't come to you unless you're there working. You're sort of, my friend David Roach, a screenwriter, had a quote pinned up over his desk when I interviewed him, and it was, "Visions come to prepared spirits." And I love that. And it was a quote from David Milch, I think his name is, another screenwriter, and it was about some chemist or something discovering some amazing thing. And he said, well, you have to earn those moments of, the visions coming. And I guess, I grew up Catholic. I've got a fair bit of, Catholic guilt and mixed in with some weird Protestant work ethic or something. And, I kind of like the idea that you have to earn things. And then actually the joy is so great when you've been working really hard. And sometimes, I say in the book, the pragmatist is what keeps a book on the rails for long, long months, sometimes years, where nothing is really, there's no, joyful, revelation for ages and ages. But if I don't go to the desk and work regularly and just sort of plod along, and for me, the routine stuff usually involves a word count. So it'll be in the early stages, sort of 500 to 1,000 words a day. And that's in the generative drafting stage. And that is, I do that word count thing because at that point for me, quantity is all that matters, because I can't think about quality because it's all terrible. So if I thought, I have to write good words today, then I wouldn't write anything. And that goes back to the, the young woman who was talking about doing the drawing and saying, it's not very good, so I have to stop. So if I did that, there would be no books.
Yeah, permission to be shit at the start. Charlotte, you said there about visions coming to the prepared spirit, and I remember very clearly, I've gone completely off the questions that I had prepared for you now, but very clearly when we started that mentorship and I came to you and I was still very in the romantic myth of the tortured artist, and that a book had to break me and that there had to be anguish in the process. And one of the very first things you offered was this idea of a shift in the mindset or the kind of creative mindset that you had spent time researching and that you had implemented in your creative life. Can you just talk briefly about that creative mindset and the optimal creative mindset? Because it's so powerful.
Yeah, I mean, we all kind of love the tortured artist thing because it's sort of romantic. And I'm not at all suggesting that good art does not come out of suffering sometimes. Not all the time, but, if you look at a painting by Francis Bacon, it's not, roses and sunsets. There is dark, I would say a tortured kind of soul produced those pictures. However, and I think whatever works for you, so my rule is do whatever you like, whatever works. But for me, and it was while I was writing The Natural Way of Things, I came to this point of just exhaustion and paralysis, and that kind of misery and the fear of going to the desk just became overwhelming. And I thought, why do I want to do this? why do I, look, that was the only thing in my life that made me miserable. You know, I had a lovely husband, I've got great friends, family, you know, everything else is cool. But the thing that I do every day in my life is making me utterly miserable. And I just, you know, it was awful. And partly that was because I was resisting this material and it wasn't working, etc. But around the same time, I was doing my PhD, and I came across this cognitive psychology study it was a meta-analysis of 25 years of mood and creativity research. And it was about what is the most creative mood state. So they analyzed all these studies and they came up with 3 aspects that they said from a cognitive psychology point of view was the most creative mood. And the first one was a positive affect or positive hedonic tone. So just basically feeling up rather than down. The second one was a slightly elevated activation, they called it. So slightly energized, not like super energized and so excited that you can't really sit down, or so agitated and frightened that you can't do anything, but also not totally zen and relaxed. So just slightly, you know, I translated as a slight excitement. And the last one was what they called a promotion focus. And that was, it meant seeking gain rather than avoiding pain. So going to the desk thinking something good is going to be there for me, rather than, oh, I better. So, you know, when I read these things, I thought, and that was the most creative mood state. The least creative mood state was the opposite of that. So fear, anxiety, dread, fear of failure, knowing it's going to be terrible, you know, depression, gloominess, whatever. So I was like, oh, this isn't, you know, everything I do, they say is the opposite of the most creative state. So I started to do this practice, this changing my mood before I sat down. And it's kind of state creation. And Alison Manning, the psychologist who I know you know, and I think you've even interviewed her, who works with writers, taught me about this state creation where, you know, if you're a person like me who's I feel that I'm quite a skeptical person, even though I do love this sort of there's a mystical sort of side of me, but the skeptic, you know, and the sort of hard worker often overrules that. So I think, well, that's all very well. So, but if I'm going to tell the truth, I feel like shit going into my life. So at first you're like, this is just silly. I'm just pretending that I'm feeling, oh, how exciting, I might try something good today. But it was basically out of desperation. I just tried it, and it was actually astonishing to me how well it worked, in that my word count shot up immediately, which was always, you know, I love a word count because I write so slowly. And I just started getting somewhere. And it was this sense of changing my mood state. The way that I sort of translated into shorthand was to say, go to the work with curious optimism, slightly anticipatory curious optimism. So go into that room thinking, I wonder what I'll find out today about my book. I wonder what will happen in it. Ooh, how interesting. Maybe something good will happen, rather than the certainty that it was going to be terrible and boring and I couldn't wait to get out of it. So, you know, it really worked. It still really works. I still have to relearn it. Pretty much every time I go to the desk. So it's not a kind of, oh, bing, my life is cured that I discovered this thing. It's a practice, it's a discipline. But it is now part of my routine. You know, it's like, okay, let's just change this way that I'm approaching the work.
Which I think is what is such a delight. No one will ever be able to use the pictures of when I hold up the book. Like publishers always say, hold up the book, but obviously you can't use this picture because it just looks so ridiculous. But I think it's part of the delight of the book too, because there are an enormous number of strategies, ideas in there that you kind of say, hold them lightly, experiment with them and see what happens. I'm conscious that we are already blowing out our time. So I do want to make sure that people know, please put questions in the chat for Charlotte. I've already got one sitting there, which I will get to, Zana, I promise. I wanted to, though, before I go to those questions, because I think page 42 in this book is reason enough to buy the book just on its own. You don't have to open it up. It's okay. But I know that people will know these moments. You had been having an absolutely shit-ass time in your writing, and you, with your beautiful writers group, you sent them an email to say, you know, I've had to just work out why I should keep going, like why it is that I write. And this email, and it has been published before, and I already had printed it out at that time, but it's here now forever in this book. Why did articulating those reasons, which include things like to make at all, because to create is to defy emptiness, and it is generous, and it affirms. Why did making that list help, and how has returning to it continued to help you?
I guess it reminded me of why I ever started in the first place. You know, no one starts making anything, a drawing, a cake, a book, thinking, well, I'm going to be miserable for the rest of my life doing this. You know, you do it because it's fun and you love seeing what comes out of your head or your, you know, saucepan or whatever. And it's play, right? It's the playfulness that is the pleasure of it. And I think often, as soon as you start to professionalize something, you lose that sense of play. And I guess for those of us, and I think most writers who, you know, go on any longer than 1 or 2 books, it's a calling, you know, it's a vocation. It's not, you know, it doesn't make any sense to be a writer. There's no logical reason to do it, because the rewards are the only rewards are internal. You only guarantee the rewards. You know, yes, things can go well. A lot of the time things go very poorly in terms of financially, and, you know, you send a book out into the world, it's gone, no one reads it, it gets pulped. You know, it's quite devastating. It's a very, very hard life. So for me, that was a bit of a turning point to go, I'm just reaffirming, it's sort of like, you know, restating your marriage vows or something, to go, why do I do this? And in every now and again when I've taught workshops and things, Alison Manning, who I work with sometimes, she and I would give that exercise to people. Just go home and write out why I write. And it's kind of amazing seeing people come back with these reasons, and you just see them opening up again with this sort of inspired kind of joy, because they realize what it does give them. And, you know, that bit that you read out, to make it all. And there's another one there too that I said, to make use of what you have and who you are. Even a limited talent brings an obligation to explore it, develop it, be grateful for it. My parents were very creative people, especially my dad, and they died young. And I was like, they gave me the talent that I have, you know, the innate talent. Then there's all the talent you grow and you develop and you learn, which is most of it. But, you know, I feel like they gave it to me, so I can't waste it. It would be a terrible thing.
That's an excellent reminder. Yeah. I've got some questions coming in, and the one from Zana, the amazing Zana Freylon, came in earlier when you were talking about those objects and the kind of odd and weird objects and visions that come to you. And Zana is a person who embraces that in her own work. She says, what do you do, Charlotte, when or if the words or ideas that come sound derivative?
Well, it all sounds derivative. Like, first of all, don't worry, because, you know, I love Anne Enright's always very good at this sort of stuff. She says things like, look, soon we'll all be dead and none of us are Proust, so just get on with it. You know? So I think, first of all, take out the anxiety. Of course, everything's been done before, no question. But I would say then, when you think, oh, that's a good idea, but oh, it's just like this or that, that's when you go, do something else, and keep doing something else. So there is a chapter in the book that has 9 ways of creative thinking, which came out of this research I did. And those things I think are really useful. So you go, okay, here's this derivative idea. I really like it, but, you know, it's got these problems. So then you go, okay, why don't I do the opposite of that? See what happens. Flip it on its head. Why don't I bring in two more things that are going to disrupt that from different angles and stick them in there? Why don't I go back to that, but in a deeper sense, and kind of circle down into it? So, but I think that conception of keep adding to it, rather, I think we often feel like, oh, I've got my idea, oh, and it's no good. Oh, well, it's over, you know. And same with a garden, or, you know, a living room, whatever. You can keep doing things to it. You keep altering it. You nudge it. You sort of take things away, put new things in. And that's why I love that Jasper Johns quote so much. It's like, keep adding to it, keep doing something else. And by doing something else all the time, it gradually changes. So it's not derivative anymore.
That's excellent. We can do writing exercises on that, Zana. Kylie Ladd, another writer who has joined us.
Hi, Kylie.
She said, hello, this may well be picked up in the book because she's only picked it up yesterday. Tips for dealing with fear. Kylie's saying, I have to overcome fear every single time I sit down to write, and it's exhausting and it's time consuming. How do you turn fear into play?
Okay, so that's exactly this stuff we were talking about before. And first of all, I think just accept it. Like, okay, I'm fearful, but then it's like, all right, so what? We're all fearful. Put it aside. You know, don't attach too much. It's what the meaning that you give to these things, I think. And Jerry Saltz is a writer that I love, and I know lots of people can't stand him, but he is the critic for the art critic for New York Magazine, and he has a little book called How to Be an Artist right there, and it's full of, it's like 63 tips or something, and I really love them. And one of them is something like, just make your bad art. So I suppose I would think about, what am I afraid of? I mean, that might be helpful. Write a list of, what am I afraid of? I'm so fearful of what? But really name it, articulate it. Failure, public humiliation, being continually broke, fearful that, you know, say for that young woman who was doing the drawing, my parents were right, but I shouldn't, it's a waste of time, blah, blah, blah. So writing all those things down and then going, okay, let's say all of those things are true. Okay, fine, keep going. You know, so Jerry Saltz says, just go make your bad art, you big baby. And I love that. It's like, yeah, of course it's bad. It doesn't matter, it's kind of irrelevant. So I think almost fighting the fear is exhausting as just letting it be there. But I do think if you can flip, like, do this mindset change thing, fake it. Just pretend you're not afraid. What would happen if I wasn't afraid? Just pretend for a morning.
I remember you telling me that, Charlotte, when we were doing that mentorship, and you said you just have to fake being confident until it works, you know, and it does. Isabel Robinson has asked.
Also you decide, you know, you decide. So the whole confidence thing is, oh, I'll be confident when someone tells me I'm good, or I, you know, get a 2-book deal, or blah, blah, or a better agent, and all the things. You'll always find a reason to be confident later on. And it's so boring. It's so time wasting. It's like the fear. So you just go, I'm going to be confident. I'm just going to do it. And of course it feels like you're faking it. But the more you just decide to do it, it works. Like, you know that you found that, right?
I know it. Isabel has asked, and everyone can see now why Charlotte's obsessed with the idea of being an agony aunt, because she can actually solve all of our problems. So I'm keeping an eye on the time. We'll have a time for a couple more that are sitting here. Isabel says, what do you say to worried people, say, for instance, your parents, who do not understand why you would go to a desk to write day after day for no money instead of getting a nice steady job with the government? Any tips?
Well, you're an adult. It doesn't matter what your parents think. I'm sorry. And so you have to find a way to say, I understand what you think, you know, as nicely as you can, but it's actually none of your business. Truly. I mean, unless you are depending on your parents for financial support or whatever, and then you've got to go, okay, I'll make a decision. I don't depend on them for that. It's not their decision what you do with your life. And you have to be grown up, and like all artists have to seize the authority over their own work and their own time and their own space. And it's a big lesson to learn. And I think women have a harder time of it because we try to be nice and we like pleasing everyone and we don't like upsetting people because our culture has told us we're not allowed to. But artists, in order to get the time and space they need, you're going to upset people. Just unfortunately, that's the way it is. You don't go out of your way to do it. But, you know, you say, I can't have lunch with you and I can't do that and I can't, you know, play with my... I mean, I've had women, you know, in my little retreat thing sometimes who are in their 60s who finally want to claim the time and space to write, who have their 34-year-old children unable to leave them alone for 2 hours. And I'm like, you have to make that not happen. It's not your kid's fault. It's your fault. So, you know, this thing about how to get other people to understand, it actually doesn't matter if they understand. You have to actually want to do it enough is the main thing. God, I'm so bossy.
I know you are, and I feel like we could make up some, you know, some extra merch here. Michelle Wright, another wonderful writer who's here, has said, "I loved the quote from Chuck Close about problem creation and searching for answers that only you can find. How do you overcome the worry that the answer you find will not be understood by your readers or by your publisher, etc.?"
It's interesting. All these questions are always about worry and anxiety, and it's, you know, I get it because I live it every day as well. Well, it's about risk. And I taught this fantastic little sort of workshop series recently for these wonderful writers. And one of they said, we want to talk about risk and how you take risks that you know are going to pay off. That's not what a risk is. A risk is that you don't know if it's going to pay off. And so it's the same thing, I guess, worrying that it's, you know, it's not going to work. Well, you have to take the risk. And it's taking the risk is powerful because there's energy in the risk taking and you can feel it in the work. So, you know, you can try the wacky thing and it doesn't work. And then you discover that it doesn't work somewhere along the line. Might be after you've written a whole book and it doesn't work. Might be after a year of work, might be after whatever. But you cannot grow as an artist if you're not prepared to go into this unknowing space. And a lot of the Luminous Solution is about embracing this space between certainty. Because that's where artists live, is in this you know, this place that is full of doubt and uncertainty. And it's the tension between these states of certainty that kind of gives life to work, I think. So, you know, you can do stuff about the worry, but it will never go away, Michelle. I'm very sorry to say. It just doesn't. What you get better at is tolerating, I think. And you get better at going, oh, I feel really anxious about this and I'm worried it's not going to work. And then you go, oh, you know, welcome to work. Yeah.
Perfect answer. And I can say wholeheartedly, because I've gone through this a few times now, that the extrapolations on all of these answers are also in this book. And the way, Charlotte, that you talk about it as a synthesis of all those kinds of books that you've obsessed over and those writers' interviews that you have done yourself and all the ones in the Paris Review, etc., that you've read, and you describe how they have your back. And you can see I've got my very well thumbed writer's room up here, along with the books that have my back, and I can utterly guarantee people that The Luminous Solution should be one of those books that has your back as a writer and creative in the world. And even if you are a person, as Charlotte says, who is yet to kind of let that inner creative unfurl in the ways that it might in your garden or your cake making, I highly recommend it to you. I know you've all got a copy through someone saying don't stop. I have to stop. It's 8:51. We've gone so over time. I know you've all got a copy already for yourselves, but I do recommend that perhaps you purchase another copy to gift to someone else. Charlotte Wood, you are such a joy to talk with every time. And I know that there is such gold in there. And thank you for all of the insights and wisdoms that you give to all of us in our creative community, because it's very nourishing.
Look, I love talking to you, Kate, as you know, and yeah, I know I also get very bossy in my advice, but I mean, anyway, I'll shut up. Yeah. Thank you, and thank you, Mira, for
we love how bossy you get. You can get the Charlotte's book, The Luminous Solution, is at the Eltham Bookshop. So is the Writer's Room. I was there today, and everything is there, and Charlotte's backlist as well. There's people who are saying that it's been so wonderful already, Charlotte. So thank you to Mira. Thank you for all of you for turning out at daylight savings until this late hour. It's been so wonderful. You will get a recording of this tomorrow as well, so you can listen back and make sure that you get all the details. You're being told not to apologize for being bossy, Charlotte. It's been wonderful. So thank you all so much. I'm going to do the very awkward thing of ending the meeting, because otherwise I stay all night and chat to everyone, and I'm not going to do that to let Charlotte go. So Charlotte, absolute joy as always. Enjoy your one last night at the beach. Mwah, mwah, mwah. Thank you, Mira. Thank you everyone for coming.
Hang in there, Victoria, is what I have to say.
Thanks, Charlotte. Bye.
Bye.